Hey everybody. So today we're starting a new devotion plan. And this one is going to be called God Has No Limits. And so if you haven't, I encourage you to download the Bible app. It's a really good app. And it's good to have. It has really good devotions that we often go through. And so, like I said, what you do is you download the Bible app, and once you've done that, you'll click plans at the bottom of the screen or top of the screen, depending on your device. And then you'll click plans, and then you'll click new, and then you'll scroll one until you see one called God. What was? Oh, God Has No Limits, and it should look a little something like that. Oh, let me see right there. God has no limits. It should look a little something like that. So we're looking at day 1 today, and we're also be looking at the rest of Acts chapter 5, which was verses 17 through 42. And so in day 1 of God Has No Limits, it was titled, let me go back to mine. What is day 1 titled? It was titled No Limit to His Power Over Matter. And basically, this devotion today kind of looks at the story where Moses takes his staff and turns the Nile into blood. And it really shows that God really has no limits. Because so often we try to limit God. We try to think that God is only this big. When in reality, God is massive. God is huge, and there is no limits to God. God has no limits. He can do whatever He wants to, and this devotion kind of actually shows that today. And we're in Exodus where Moses raises up his staff. He hits the Nile with his staff, and the entire Nile River, which is over 4,000 something miles long, something like that, turns completely to all the blood, and it becomes so, and we see that the fish died, and it stinks so horribly that the Egyptians couldn't drink it. Just like that, Moses just bam, and God turned the Nile River into blood. It really shows that God has no limits. We cannot place a limit on God. God is powerful and strong and mighty. And what the beautiful thing about God is that when we have a relationship with Him, He uses His power, and He uses His unlimited power for our benefit. He uses that for His glory and to benefit us, because we know that in the Bible it says that the Lord works to the good of those who love Him. And so we can rest assured that when we have a relationship with God, He's on our side, and He wants what's best for us because of the fact that He is a good Father. And He loves us, and He just wants the best for us. And what's best for us is to trust Him and to obey Him. And that's what He wants us to do. He wants us to trust Him, and He wants us to obey Him. And when we do that, we get to experience life to the fullest. When we obey God, we get to experience life like never before. And we get to experience to the fullest because we're walking in obedience to Him, which is what is best for us. Because he can see the overall picture. We kind of just see what's in front of us, but God sees the entire picture. It's kind of like, in a building, you only see what's in front of you, so you only see the wall. But God can see the entire structure because He's got the aerial view. He can see the whole thing. The same thing kind of applies to this. We think we know what's best. We think that if we take this path down this way, it'll be good. If we go down that way or whatever, it'll be good for us. But in reality, God sees the whole thing. He doesn't just have a limited view like we do. He can see the overall thing, and so He knows what's best for us, and He knows that walking in obedience to Him and following Him and trusting Him, even when we don't understand it, is what's best for us, because He's a good Father, and He's only going to provide the best for us. And then in Acts chapter 5, one of my favorite things I love about this one is in verses 33 through 42, we get this guy named Gamaliel, I think that's how you say his name. Anyways, Gamaliel gets all the council together, all the early church council together, and they're discussing Peter and John about in regards to the early church, and how, because the early church is booming and it's popping right now, and more and more people are coming to know Jesus, more and more people are becoming saved, and as you can imagine, a lot of the Jewish religious leaders didn't like that because they were trying to shut down this Jesus movement. And what Gamaliel does, he comes in and he pretty much drops the bomb on them, and he gives a couple examples of some movements that had been started before. Hold on one second. Excuse me. Anyways, Gamaliel comes in and he gives some examples of some movements that had been started before Jesus, and how it got shut down. He talks about how Theodotus, I think that's how you say his name, and it talks about how this guy rose up claiming to be somebody, and he had about 400 men, but then he was killed, and everybody who followed him died, the Theodotus movement. And then it goes into, after this man, Judas of Galilee rose up, and it talks about how a lot of people followed this guy, and then all of a sudden it just kind of diminished down to nothing, and that movement was shut down. And then he talks about this Jesus movement. He goes and he says, okay, so he basically says, leave these guys alone, these people who are spreading this Jesus movement, who are trying to get this Jesus movement started. And he says them because, you see, just like, history is going to repeat itself. If this is of men, if this is a man-made thing, then it's going to naturally diminish, and it's just going to fade away, just like the other two had. But if this is from God, if this is a God thing, then you won't be able to stop it. And I love that, 'cause he goes, he's like, guys, listen. If this whole Jesus movement, if this whole church movement was sent, is coming from God, then you're not going to be able to stop it. There's nothing you will be able to do to stop it. But if it's from men, if it's a man-made thing, then yeah, it'll diminish over time. It'll flake just like the rest of the movements have. And so I kind of find great joy in that, because of the fact that, when God is doing something in our lives, if it's something that we've dreamt up, and if it's something that God's just, I don't know about that, then yeah, it's going to diminish. But if God is behind it, then nothing on earth will be able to stop it. If God is behind it, then you won't be able to shut it down. You won't be able to stop it. And so I kind of find great joy in that, and I hope you do too. So I will catch y'all later. Bye.